My first question is, what is the role of the language teacher?
What's the role of a language teacher? Well, of course, teaching language, obviously, but as I see it, a large part of my job is cheerleading, helping the student to understand, hey, you really can learn this. This is not insurmountable.
Cheerleading,
Yeah.
entertainment, basically.
No.
But okay, cheerleading, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, helping. Yeah, it's like you can do it. Don't give up. You know that. And pointing out where they're doing well, where they have made some progress, helping them to see you really did do this. Go for the next step. Yeah.
I think you're a big proponent of mistake correction. Is that right?
Yes, very much so.
You see, I used to be the strict one, but I kind of lost faith in mistake correction. Why are you a believer in mistake correction? What makes you think that correcting mistakes actually helps?
Well, I don't correct all mistakes. I do. I kind of go back and forth. You know, with some students, I think as many as possible need to be corrected, and I kind of take my cue from the student. Is if they want me to correct all the time, then I'll do that. But
let me ask you this. Okay, let me ask you this. Why do you think people make mistakes in the first place? In order to figure out why mistake corrections work or don't work, we need to ask ourselves, why do people make mistakes in the first place? So why do you think people make mistakes?
In my experience, I teach in Taiwan, and in my experience, many of the people who have been learning English here learned English from somebody else who's not a native speaker. And so it's the blind leading the blind. And so, they didn't have their mistakes corrected, and then they teach that mistake to somebody else. And so,
you think so? In Taiwan,
yes.
There are no good teachers. You mean?
No. What I mean,
but it's not just not in Taiwan. People make mistakes all over the world.
Yeah.
Non-native speakers, not just of English, of any language. If you were to speak Taiwanese. Chinese, sorry, you would make
and Taiwanese
a ton of mistakes.
Oh, sure.
Is it because your teachers don't speak good Taiwanese?
No. What I mean is that, like, one person who's at, say, level 1, sees somebody who's at level 1.5 and or 2 or 3, and they're like, oh, that person speaks better English than I do. Let me learn something from them. Yeah. How do I say this in English? How do I say that in English? And they're not a teacher that they're learning from. It's just their friend. And
that's the case with students in Taiwan, really?
Many, yes.
I live in Japan, and from my experience, that's not the case. But they still make a ton of mistakes. A ton. And in Japan, I don't know how it's in Taiwan. In Japan, there are these people called teacher assistants. I'm not sure that those are native speakers of English.
Okay.
So they do speak proper English, but still, Japanese people make plenty of mistakes.
Sure, yeah.
So my explanation is very simple. It's not just with regards to language. People make mistakes because they haven't spent enough time with the language.
Sure. Yeah, that's a big one too. Yeah.
It's not that when I say with the language, I mean real, genuine native speaker content, not textbooks.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Actually, yeah, I believe very, very firmly that really the only way to truly learn the language is you got to have conversations. You got to talk.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
I disagree, but I'll ask you about that just in a minute. So,
okay.
What do you think happens when you correct somebody? So they have, for example, a very common mistake people make is I am boring instead of I am bored, or I'm interesting instead of, those are extremely common mistakes, or the S in the third form.
Yeah.
He like sushi.
Mhm.
So when you correct and you say he likes sushi, or I am bored, not I am boring, which I'm
Yeah.
boring is okay, but in this case you mean I am bored.
Right.
So when you correct such mistakes, what do you think happens in the student's brain?
Well, I would say it does absolutely have to do with how the correction is done. So I generally try to wait until the student is finished with their thought, their phrase, or whatever, and then I'll say, okay, just now you said this, and here's what you should say. Here's the correct way to say it, and here's why. And so
And this usually works in your experience? They never repeat the same mistake again?
Oh no, of course they repeat it, but then each time they repeat it, I try to remind them, hey, you got to say it this way.
So there's no end to mistake correction, is my point, right?
Well, eventually, I do have students who eventually start to recognize, oh, I made that mistake, and then they start to self-correct.
Okay.
It takes time. It's time consuming for sure.
Let me read you something I read recently about the role of the language teacher. The role of the teacher is to teach the student how to learn alone without a teacher, how to become an independent learner.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
Sure. Yeah.
So what I try to do is teach them how to, as you just said, self-correct.
Mm-hmm.
How they can figure out the mistakes they make on their own, because a teacher correcting mistakes all the time, it's not efficient, it's expensive, it just doesn't make
Sure.
sense.
Oh,
to
yeah,
me.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
They keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. A very
Mhm.
common mistake people make in Japan is they say almost people. Almost people like sushi. I don't know
Yeah.
what. I mean, I
China,
can't.
Taiwan's the same.
Same. I
Yeah.
mean, how many times have I corrected that mistake? And they keep saying, this is one of my favorite mistakes people make. But that's not just for Japanese. I think
Hmm.
a lot of non-native speakers make. I've never made this mistake. I don't know why they make it.
Yeah.
But anyway, one of my favorite mistakes, because what I usually tell them is that almost people means monkeys, apes, and they laugh.
Yeah.
But it's just they make the same mistake the next day. Just no use. Everything you need to know about how to learn a foreign language you can find in my book, Virtually Native, which is available on Amazon and virtuallynative.com. You have one life. Don't waste it.